The play begins in the streets of Verona, where two servants from the house of Capulet decide to pick a fight with servants from their rival house of Montague. Benvolio, a Montague nobleman, and Tybalt, a hot-tempered Capulet, enter this scene, which quickly escalates into a full-on sword fight. Sick of the constant squabbling, the citizens of the Watch join in the brawl until Prince Aeschylus steps in, threatening to execute anyone who continues to disturb the peace. After this violent episode, Benvolio meets up with Romeo, the son of Lord Montague, who has been moping around in the forest pining after a girl named Rosalind. Benvolio tries to cheer him up by pointing out that there are lots of other beautiful women in Verona, but unsurprisingly this doesn't work. Meanwhile, Paris, a relative of the prince, asks Lord Capulet for his daughter's hand in marriage, and although he loves the idea, he asks Paris to wait because Juliet is only 14. However, he invites him to a feast he is throwing that night, and sends out a servant with a list of other people to invite as well. Unfortunately, the servant cannot read, so when he comes across Romeo and Benvolio, he gives them the list so they can read out the names. Benvolio has the bright idea to crash the party so that Romeo can see how many better women there are than Rosalind, and although Romeo isn't convinced, he decides to go because Rosalind will be there. Once the feast begins, Romeo, Benvolio, and their friend Mercutio crash the banquet wearing masks to hide their faces. But when Romeo sees the beautiful Juliet across the room, he immediately forgets all about Rosalind and falls head over heels for her instead. At this point, the hot-tempered Tybalt sees through their feeble mask disguises, and is so angry that they dare to turn up uninvited that he is ready to kill them then and there, but Lord Capulet restrains him in order to keep the peace. Romeo approaches Juliet, and it is soon clear that the attraction is mutual, although neither of them know who the other is. This is short-lived, however, as they soon discover to their shock and devastation that they are from rival families, and there is no way they will ever be allowed to be together. Romeo is so besotted with Juliet that he hangs around after the party to try to get a glimpse of her from underneath her window. He's in luck, as Juliet comes out onto her balcony to profess her love for Romeo to what she thinks is an empty garden. Jumping out of his hiding place, he tells her that he feels the same way, and the two young lovers quickly decide that they should get married immediately, like the very next day. True to his word, Romeo rushes over to Friar Lawrence asking him to marry them, and although he is shocked at how quickly he has gotten over Rosalind, he agrees because he sees an opportunity to end the Capulet-Montague feud. The next day they are secretly married, with only Friar Lawrence and Juliet's nurse as witnesses. Things are about to get messy, as the very same day Mercutio and Benvolio run into Tybalt on the streets, who is still enraged about Romeo crashing their party and wants to challenge him to a duel. Romeo turns up, but since he is now secretly related to Tybalt by marriage, he definitely does not want to fight him. Angered by his lack of Montague patriotism, Mercutio fights Tybalt instead, and although Romeo tries to intervene, Tybalt stabs Mercutio and he dies. With peace now out of the question, Romeo attacks Tybalt and kills him, before fleeing to Friar Lawrence. When the prince arrives at the bloody scene, Benvolio tells him what happened, and since technically the fight was Tybalt's fault, Romeo is banished from Verona rather than executed. To him, this is worse than death though, since he can no longer be near Juliet, but Friar Lawrence persuades him to accept the punishment for the time being. Meanwhile, Juliet, who is anxiously awaiting her husband, now hears the news of Tybalt's death and Romeo's banishment. Although she is upset that he killed her cousin, she is ultimately more relieved that he is still alive. The young couple spend one secret night together, and Romeo sneaks away at dawn before he is discovered. Unfortunately, the recent events have pushed Juliet's father to decide that she and Paris should actually get married right away. This is obviously not ideal for Juliet, who is already married, but cannot reveal that she is. Her parents rebuke her for being a stubborn and ungrateful child, and even her nurse, who knows her secret, tells her to forget about Romeo and marry Paris instead. Juliet ignores her nurse's advice and goes to see Friar Lawrence, who comes up with a desperate plan to stop her from killing herself. He gives her a potion which will make it look like she is dead for 42 hours, and then once she is in the family crypt, Romeo will sneak in and take her away to Mantua to live happily ever after. This plan seems to have some dangerous loopholes, but Juliet is ecstatic and returns to her parents to apologize for her behavior and agree to marry Paris. That night, however, she drinks the potion and is discovered the next day by her nurse, who believes she is dead. Everyone falls for the trick, and sure enough, Juliet is taken to the crypt, ready to be rescued by her beloved Romeo. Everything seems to be going smoothly so far, but unbeknownst to them, one vital piece of the plan has failed. The letter which Friar Lawrence sent to Romeo never arrives, so when Romeo learns of Juliet's death from his servant Balthazar, he is beside himself with grief, and decides to go back to Verona to her crypt and kill himself there by drinking a vial of poison. When he arrives at the crypt, however, he runs into Paris, who is spreading flowers on Juliet's grave, and assumes that Romeo is there to do something messed up to her body. Romeo's really not in the mood to fight, but Paris gives him no choice, and after a quick struggle, he kills him. Seeing that Juliet really does look dead, he drinks the vial of poison and quickly dies. Too late, Friar Lawrence arrives to see both men dead, and Juliet just waking up to discover the horrific scene. The sound of fighting has alerted the watch, however, and the friar flees to avoid being caught up in the mess, leaving Juliet alone in the crypt. Devastated by his death, Juliet kisses Romeo's lips to try to ingest some of the poison, but when this doesn't work, she chooses to stab herself instead, and she too dies. The watch and the prince soon arrive, followed by half the town and the Lord and Lady Capulet and Lord Montague. There is some confusion about what has happened, but Friar Lawrence and Balthazar fill in the missing pieces. Seeing their dead children who suffered a terrible fate because of their feud, the Capulets and Montagues swear to end their rivalry and promise to erect golden statues of Romeo and Juliet in memory of their short and tragic love story. Thanks for watching, guys! Stay tuned for follow-up analysis videos soon to come. See you next time!